taking three.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course. Today's video will be a little shorter. Like I mentioned in the end of yesterday's video, I am currently traveling, so I'm not in my normal location. So I'm just maybe putting out a few shorter videos while I'm away here, but still getting stuff out. Obviously, with the announcement yesterday of German cruisers, very important that we take a look at these German cruisers. So, we'll start at Tier 1, the Headland. Again, pronunciation, I'm sorry. But anyway, so this actually, we knew that this ship was coming out. This was announced long ago. This ship and the Dresden actually both announced long ago, so no real surprise here. But it's going to be nice to see at this Tier 1 level, where you're going to have a high-speed ship at Tier 1. Very interesting. Also, on a side note, I was talking to Rommel. You may remember him from a few videos. He's actually my roommate in real life, so, you know, we talk all the time. Anyway, Rommel and I were talking, and Rommel was actually a little upset with these German cruisers because they don't have as much information as the Russian destroyers did. At first, I disagreed with him. I said, no, it's the same thing, I said. But then looking at it and talking to him more, you know, in the Russian descriptions of the destroyers, they give you, for some of the destroyers, they gave you key information. Rates of fire, caliber of guns, different things like that. In these German cruisers overview, we don't see any of that other than the numbers over here on the right hand side of our screen. And we can't click on them to break it down. The only possible explanation I could come up with this, for this rather, is that not many people would know about the Russian Navy during World War II. Frankly, I didn't know a whole lot about them. I figured they didn't have a Navy, and why bother researching it, right? And I know that's closed-minded of me, but anyway, that's what I thought. And I imagine Wargaming would have suspected this as well, right? So they would have put a little more information into the Russian destroyers to give you a better idea of what you would be dealing with. Whereas with the German ships, these German ships are highly anticipated, right? Everyone wants German ships in this game. I don't care who you are, you want a German ship in the game. Torpedoes isn't enough for you. So because the hype for these ships is so much more, I suspect that Wargaming didn't put out as much information on these ships to sort of build that hype, right, until they come out. So that's my theory behind this. Could be completely wrong, completely off, and I could sound like a shill for Wargaming, but that's how I see it. Anyway, so Tier 1, this cruiser will be interesting. I like the fact that it's fast, right? We're going to see that at the Tier 1 mark, and excited to see it anyway. The Dresden. This is actually a famous ship from World War I. The Dresden and the Edmund, I think. They were known as the last German cruisers. They were some cruisers that were part of the overseas fleet for Germany during World War I before hostilities broke out, and they actually did quite a bit of raiding. It was something else. I think it was the Dresden. The Dresden and her battle group, overseas battle group, were located in and around the Indian Ocean, I believe. Maybe closer to China, Singapore, that area. Anyway, when hostilities broke out, the Dresden battle group were all recalled to Germany, except the Dresden. The Dresden had to stay behind, cover their retreat, or their withdrawal, I should say, and conduct raiding. And she did this successfully for quite some time. The British actually had to send a number of ships to hunt down the Dresden. And then the Dresden crew, the trip that they took to get back to Germany is phenomenal. I mean, they basically landed, what nation is that? I want to say Sudan, somewhere in around there. You know, now we're just below the Suez Canal, that type of area, right? So Sudan, and then they have to walk all the way up through Turkey before finally boarding a train to get back to Germany. So really cool ship, lots of history. I would highly suggest you guys take a look at the Dresden and the Edmund. I think it's Edmund. two very famous ships of the German Navy during World War I. So I'm happy to see the Dresden here. I mean, you know, it's a World War I armored cruiser, or protected cruiser. So protected cruiser and armored cruiser, the difference there is simply the amount of thickness of the armor that's protecting. So a protected cruiser would have less armor than an armored cruiser, right? And you can see the transition of ships when we're moving from World War I into World War II, how the simplicity that gets involved or gets incorporated into the ships by World War II, and you no longer have these crazier classes, protected cruisers, armored cruisers, that sort of stuff. Moving into Tier 3, we've got the Kolberg. Yeah, a Kolberg is basically a Dresden, just an up-armored Dresden, right? So there's not a whole lot going on here. Higher speed, more powerful artillery. The Shula. I took German in university, actually, you know, and I just squeaked by the skin of my teeth. But obviously I didn't take a whole lot away from it other than being able to say Achtung. Anyway, so the Shula, one of the most powerful light cruisers of World War I, right? Again, I'm not going to be reading this information to you. You guys can read it. I'm sure you've already looked at it. But it should be a nice cruiser at Tier 4. She's larger and more powerful. And at Tier 4, I'm interested to see how they define relatively strong armor when you compare it to, say, a Kuma or a Phoenix. I would imagine that it's a lot better than those ships, given that a Kuma and Phoenix have no armor. Now, Tier 5. So we're getting into some more interesting things. Actually, before I go too far, I wanted to note when the Germans start getting torpedoes. So it's actually at Tier 4. Okay, so Tier 4, cruisers start getting torpedoes. Tier 5, Königsberg. This ship, I think, is going to be really awesome at the Tier 5 for a Tier 5 cruiser. Keeping in mind, it'll have to compete against Omahas and Furutakas at this time, right? So I see this as being a very, very nice cruiser at Tier 5. You know, she's got torpedoes. That's great. She's got good artillery and unconventional arrangement of the aft main turrets. Not sure what that means. Can't really see them here. It looks like there's two on the back and one on the front. Maybe that's what they mean. I'm not sure, but I do think that this is going to be a nice ship at the Tier 5 level. Excuse me. Going into Tier 6, we've got the Nuremberg. I'm also very excited for this. Essentially, it's just an up-armored Königsberg, right? More or less. You just get more armor, you get better guns, you get good torpedoes. Let's see if the torpedoes are actually the same, 28 and 28. Yeah, torpedoes are the same. I'm interested to see what the range is on these German torpedoes, because that's going to determine how I use the torpedoes, right? If it's a long-range torpedo, then obviously I'm going to be just using it whenever possible. Maybe offensively, aerial deniement, that sort of stuff. Where if it's a short-range torpedo, yeah, it's probably mostly going to be for defense. But we also get some AA defensive guns on this ship, and they say here that it's a swarm of anti-aircraft guns. So I'm also interested in seeing how they define swarm, right? The Torpedoes has a swarm of anti-aircraft guns, but they're not very effective. Is this going to be the same thing here with the Nuremberg? We don't know. Let's see, so 10 to 22. Yeah, it's a pretty big jump there for A guns from Tier 5 to Tier 6. So moving into Tier 7, we've got the York. I'm going to say the C is silent and say York, because that's just the way I want to do it, but I'm liking this cruiser. I know there's not a whole lot of information on it, and I'm really just going on the picture and the numbers that I see in front of me, but we're finally taking a look at some heavier German cruisers, right? Keep in mind at the Tier 6 mark, right now you've got the Cleveland, you've got the Aoba. Both of those are technically light cruisers. You can argue with me all you want, that's fine. I'm not set on that, but I'm fairly confident they're both light cruisers, right? Specifically, Cleveland is, CL, and then the hull number, CL, is cruiser light. But anyway, we're finally getting some heavy cruisers, and this is going to be really awesome, I think. We've got torpedoes, we've got some good maneuverability, we have some good guns on the ship, and I'm really, really excited to see how accurate and how precise and how powerful the German guns are going to be. Because they keep saying in all the descriptions, powerful armament, heavy hitters, good armor. I want to see this in practice. These numbers along the side, I mean, they're there, they're good, but they don't necessarily mean anything to me. I want to see the ship in practice. Rommel and I, again, were talking about this, and you can take a shitty ship on paper. That looks terrible on paper, but then you take it out into the battlefield, and it turns out it's a really awesome ship, right? It all comes down to the captain and the abilities of the ship, the situation that the ship is in, and whether or not you can use the abilities of your ship to take advantage of those situations. Yeah. So, Tier 7 cruiser, it looks pretty sweet. Now, Tier 8, this is what I've been waiting for. Admiral Hipper class. My God, I can't wait for this ship. Why I want the ship is the historical aspect of the Admiral Hipper. That's why I want it. Of all the German surface vessels, it was the cruisers who saw the majority of the action. The cruisers, well, the Scharnhorst and guys now saw some action. They were battle cruisers, but you know, the bigger battleships, the Torpedoes, the Bismarck, didn't really see a whole lot of action. The Torpedoes never fired her main guns in battle, ever. Never. The only time she ever fired those main batteries was if potentially she could get them elevated high enough to shoot down incoming British bombers, right? And the Bismarck, we all know how that went. I mean, yeah, she got out to sea during sea trials, and she made it almost to the Atlantic, sunk the hood, which was remarkable, by the way. But you know, never saw any real prolonged combat, or never served for years in the Kriegsmarine and fought countless battles like the cruisers have. The Admiral Hippers, right? So I can't wait for this heavy cruiser. Like I say, because of the historical significance behind it. So she has an advanced gunfire control system. Now, how that was going to translate into the game, no idea. Durability is decent, and rugged construction. Elaborate subdivision into compartments, right? So again, I'm curious how this is going to be incorporated into the game. If it's going to equate to better hit points for the ship, or if it's going to equate to, you know, better armor for the ship, or if it's going to equate to having hard citadels to hit, right? Or if it's going to be a combination of all three. I don't know. I can't wait to see it, though. Really, really excited for this ship. So we'll move on to Tier 9, the Rune. Essentially, she's a larger cruiser than what we've seen before in the German line. I want to know the caliber of the guns. That's what I really want to know. Really badly, actually. I know what they were historically, but what is Wargaming going to do in the game? Are you going to have the option of upgrading the guns? Because a lot of these German ships, they were fitted out with smaller caliber guns with the idea of upgrading them later on. They were just being pressed into service because they needed them. So I'm curious about that. We still have torpedoes. It looks like the torpedoes are a little less than what they were at the earlier tiers. Keeping in mind the earlier tiers, your torpedo number was at 22. Maneuverability's up there. Concealment, no big deal, right? Artillery and survivability. I like that in this ship. 5963, yeah. I think this is going to be a nice ship at Tier 9. We'll have to go against Ibukis and Baltimores. I don't think it's going to be a big deal with this ship at all. And I just can't wait. Just can't wait to get into it. So finally we're going to go to the Tier 10, the Hindenburg. Now is this name, Hindenburg, this first thing that popped into my head was ironic. The first thing. You want to know why? Because every time you sink a Hindenburg class cruiser, all I'm going to be thinking about is, oh, the humanity of it all, right? What was that, in 36 when the Hindenburg crashed in the US? Yeah, I think it was in New York, maybe. Bit of coffee, but that's all I can think of. Anyway, getting into the ship itself, though. I can't wait for it, obviously. Again, I think it's going to be a great ship. It looks bitchin', in my opinion. I mean, all these German cruisers look bitchin' once we start at like the Tier 5 level anyway. More powerful main battery. What does that mean? Again, I want to know. I can see that the numbers are or higher here in terms of artillery. We're at 68 on the Hindenburg, and on the Rune you're at 63. So just a little more power there behind them. But I'm curious how that'll translate into the game. But I do like this cruiser. I like the German cruiser line. If you can't tell, I love the Germans. There's actually a game I play. It's called Hearts of Iron. I don't know if any of you have ever played it. I would highly recommend it. Hearts of Iron 2 Armageddon and or Hearts of Iron 3. In that game, though, you can make your own fleets. And, of course, I always play as Germany, and my fleets are always bitchin'. So, anyway, I thought I'd do a quick overview of the German cruisers. Unfortunately, I don't have any gameplay today. I just don't have the time. I've got some things I need to get done. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, thank you very much for sticking around watching it. I know I didn't go in too much depth here with the German cruisers, and it's same thing with my Russian destroyer video, or clip, I should say. You know, I don't want to go too far into these just yet. I want to have more information about them before we start really speculating about in-game. We can take a look at the numbers here, we can read them, we can take a look at the pictures, that's all fine and good, get a general sense of what's going on. But until we actually get to play these ships, or until we actually get breakdowns of them, I want to hold off on the in-depth conversations. So, all that being said, I'm curious, what is the ship that you guys are most looking forward to playing on this German cruiser line? Obviously, for me, it's going to be Admiral Hipper. I'm curious what you guys think on that as well. And yeah, as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.